software development is difficult, and making good software is even more difficult. And if you talk to accountants of different countries, and then you check their government regulations, but you still want to make a good user-friendly software that the user can use, then it's even getting more complicated. And in discussions, then we get stuck, and the only way to get out of it sometimes is to think, but why does the government do this? And how could the government improve? And sometimes that way we get to a better solution. So today I want to try to tell what are we talking about, the electronic invoicing use case, and see what governments can do for us, but at the same time also give a demo about how we already tackle those challenges. So if we are talking about electronic invoicing, mostly it's a customer invoice that you send to the government web service, because the government needs the tax info in real time. For example, Spain and Argentina, that's the only thing they do. You don't send it to your customer. But in most of the cases, you can also send it to the customer. And that has an advantage, because that customer can import that XML, and he does not need to type it again. He has all the information through that XML, so you save an administration. But what are the challenges we face when we implement such electronic invoicing? First of all, you need to have a test environment. For Italy, for example, that was difficult, because in the beginning it was with a mail system, but then now we are using a web service system, and it's good because we also finally have a test environment, and we can test in there. The problem is often, like in Chile and Ecuador, is that the credentials of the test environment needs to be your production credentials. And yeah, for us as Odoo, we don't have an office in every country in the world yet, so we need to have somehow these credentials, so we ask partners and so on. And it's also important for support and for sales to give a demo with that test environment. So most of the countries have it, but sometimes it's not that easy. We implement it for a lot of countries, like you can see on the right. Then second thing is the identification. When you send your invoices, somehow the government needs to be sure that it's you sending that invoice, because it's tax information and so on, so it has fiscal repercussions. One way is just with a user password, but what we see a lot in the Latin American countries is that they have a file that you just upload into Odoo, and that way you can sign your invoices, and they get sent to the invoices, to the government. Everything is fine. The file is password protected, so there is some security on it, and in Latin American countries, also in Spain, this works pretty fine. Some countries just have a portal, a government portal, and you need to say, okay, Odoo can process my invoices, and that way the permission is given as well. Nice. However, now, for example, with Egypt, with Kenya as well, but in Egypt it's with a USB key, with which they want to identify you. So it's like a USB key. You need to put it on your computer, and you need to interact with the USB key to be able to sign your invoices. And that makes things complicated, because you need a local proxy on your laptop, on your computer, and that's making things really difficult on our side. And we see the same thing happening in Europe, actually, where for the ADAS regulations, they often, not for ADAS itself, but they often refer to trying to use hardware. And yeah, it's just complicating things. There, yeah. Then what we also see is that what we also try to do, always try to do, is to connect to the government immediately and not through another service. Yeah, sometimes there is no other choice, or it was the best choice at the time. But some countries actually outsource the implementation of their invoice and electronic invoicing to another provider. For Mexico, we implemented 3 different PACs through which we send the invoices, but they all have a different API, so they complicate matters. However, yeah, sometimes intermediaries can be good in a peer-to-peer way, but that's not with government. In the PEPL network, we have like a nice architecture where every country has its registers with the VAT number, and you can send from one country to the other. The only pity thing is that the technology that they use is really a bit non-standard, and we have had hard time implementing it. But when it will, but we are almost there to have it in Odoo. Then, if you send an XML, which is done in most of the countries, sometimes that XML is really specific, like that's their own format, like in Mexico or in Italy. Sometimes, like France and Germany, try to make some kind of alliance together to use Factor X. And that's something that we try to push a bit as a standard hiddenly in Odoo, so it comes with your PDF. But in general, we try to, there's like a UBL, and it's even strengthened with the BIS 3.0 to make everything keep as much as possible the standards. That's a good thing. Like Peru uses it, Colombia uses UBL, but for example, Colombia extends it with its own namespace, and then, for example, for a tag like UBL version, you would need to put UBL 2.1 instead of just 2.1, which is weird, but such things apparently happen. So yeah, it's a good thing if we can follow those standards. Then we don't only use electronic invoice just for invoicing. We also can use it for the POS, for receipts. It's also being used for deliveries. But for the receipt side, for the POS side, often we see that different APIs are used for the receipt and for the invoice. Sometimes for LATAM, they just always create an invoice, but you have an invoice of type ticket and an invoice of type invoice. And for Mexico, you need to take all the tickets together, and you have a global invoice. So from that, you create one global invoice that you send to the government. And in Belgium, we have a fiscal device. We are a bit like Kenya and Egypt in that respect. And the worst part is that in the black box in Belgium, the file format is so complicated that we don't think it's actually being used for fiscal purposes. So it would be better that they just get rid of it. So it's not only those African countries that do it, but and the advantage is sometimes that in Africa they use a simple API, and in Belgium they would then complicate matters. And yeah, okay. So then another thing is consistency. You want people, as a developer, if you have to supply info that's a bit unnecessary, that's a waste of our time. And governments, if they want to get their budgets right, they should not focusing on getting a higher retirement age, but more on getting people productive. So what we see with Mexico, for example, is that with the new CFDI 4.0 that they put into place, is that they are really putting unnecessary info in that file. So before already, we needed to send the payments and tell for every payment how much from every invoice was being paid. But now they added that you have to also say how much taxes from that invoice correspond to that payment. And we got some rounding trouble there, and that rounding trouble was interpreted differently according to the different packs. So, and finally, we managed to have something that works for every 3 of them, but because the spec was open for interpretation, it was really difficult to get it right. You also see that sometimes people use modern XML with UTF-8, but then they say in the characters of my field, you can only use these and these characters, which is weird as well. So what do we suggest? Please give us an accessible test environment that has test credentials. The direct hardware, we don't have a good standard in the browser to work with all the hardware devices. So please think about something else. I think about a European level, for example. Follow standards. Give the right info for a good reason, and please use simple architecture. If you can directly connect to the government, it's better than to intermediaries, which don't provide much added value. So, ready for a demo to show how we already try to cope in Odoo with all of this. So we are so we create automatically several in a demo database. If you install the localization, it will create a demo company with as much as possible already the demo certificate installed and so on. Here with the Peruvian company, we even use through IAP, so it's even easier. But the problem in test environment is that probably somebody else has already done a demo with 004 or 003. That's the thing. That's why people sometimes copy production, because you can do everything like in production, but then you also need production credentials. But here we have a test environment, and maybe someone else has already tested with this one. So we want to quickly create a new journal. I duplicate it and put another code. And I make sure that it's of its highest priority. And then when I create an invoice to my Spain company, it will use another number, and here I can be sure that I use something unique. I will take my demo service, maybe get a bit of a price. I confirm it, and I will send it to my Spain company. You see that I have an error. That's because I do an exportation and my operation type is not right. So I will put exportation of services. I confirm, I process. And I have here my zip file, which I can extract. And I can import it in my Spain company. Better to go here. I create. So here in my Spain company, I go to vendor bills because I will import it as a vendor bill. In my downloads, I have my no. I have the file here, I think. Yep. And I import that file. And because this is not even using the Peruvian localization, it uses the module UBL to just import that UBL. But for the export, we use the specific Peru code. So the only thing I need to do here is add the tags. Extra comunitario. Oh. I confirm. And I can send it to the Spanish government as a. And you will see that here you have a JSON that we send to the government. They just want the tax information. We are not going for their vendor bills as well. Then, in Odoo, we try to do things user-friendly way. We try to do everything better all of the time, because everything can always be done in a better way. And that's why sometimes we prefer usability over implementing. Well, actually, all the time we prefer usability over implementing every feature. So for Italy, sometimes people will say, "Oh no, we missed this or this," and in order to do that, we can go to. I'll just go to the other tab. Sorry. Here I have in technical views. I have all my views, and I also have a view of the Italian XML of the Q app. This will be converted into an XML, and it's with how we retrieve all the information that we put in the XML. But if we have, so what we can do is extend that view. But for that, we need an extra field, and that extra field we created in our through Studio. So I have, if I have my customer invoice here, I can just activate Studio, and I want to add a text field in there with the causale. I close it. And yeah, there I can put something, so I can duplicate this invoice that I want to say, send. I put something in there. I save. And now I just need to be able to change that view. And for that, I can just create a new view that extends this old one. I call it I will copy paste to add. So there's a simple XPath that says after the document imported totale documento, add the field causale coming from the field we added, just added in Studio. And if we go back to our Italian company here, and we confirm this invoice, we process it, then normally you will see the XML. I open that XML, and you will see in the dati generali that the causale was added. So that way, in Odoo, we can, because we have a system where we try to do everything user-friendly in the basics, but if you need, in the case you would need an extra field, it can be added in a simple way. And of course, we have partners who can help further, but that way we can concentrate on usability first. Thanks. you.
Thank you. So here we have 4 questions. So the first one, is there a standard API for the e-invoicing in Kenya that can be implemented on Odoo SH v13?
The problem is that in Kenya there is no standard API, so you have to work to the devices, and those devices each have a different API. So we depend on the provider. We are checking to have the right provider that we can say, okay, for Odoo we use that machine. The API from the machine with the government seems standard, but we don't. It's a lot of work if you want to create a device ourselves. So we are checking. We are working on a couple of devices to make it work.
Thank you. We have a second one. How does Odoo receive invoices from Faturapa in Italy?
Okay, we have a proxy server. This is the team of IAP that's providing that, and that on that proxy server, actually the government calls our server to put an invoice on our server, and then it is on our server, and we try to match with the right Odoo instance when we receive it.
Okay, thanks. We have another one. Can invoice be sent as JSON, not XML? Sorry.
Yes, of course. Yes. For example, for the Spain thing you saw for the SII, that is a JSON that is sent. And I think for Egypt we also sent JSON, and then we just construct the JSON in the Python. We don't use the QR.
Okay, we have a long question. So when needing to implement a project in a country we don't have e-invoicing for, how do you recommend an approach getting the requirement of information in it? So take your time because it's a long one.
Well, you try to check on the government if they have documentation. Sometimes that happens it happens a lot. That's just on the government site you find all the information, and you can start working from there. As we do, of course, we try to inform as much as possible also with partners where the right information is, because that's not always that simple to find the right one. If really if for example we check for devices or we check for APIs, we are of course going to check which ones are simple to implement, which ones are the price, and depends on and if the customer will like it, of course.
We have a question from Egypt. So my question is, can Odoo automate sending data directly then receive the issue e-invoice? So for Egypt.
Can Odoo automate sending data directly? But we have done the implementation, so we can send the data, but the data needs to be signed first, and that's why we need to interact with a local USB key to get it signed. So, and that way you need to click a button, and after it will be sent to the government. That's how it works right now.
Great. I saw that a lot of questions are coming, so maybe we can do another one, and next one. So, do you know what is the feature of people integration? People.
What is the future of the people integration? Well, the future will be that we will have it. Someone is working on it, so in a couple of months we should have that, and it will be. I think it will be really nice, because it will mean that we will be able to just send invoices immediately from one company to the other, so without needing much extra information. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I don't know if you want to answer to a last one. Yeah. We have 1 minute. Perfect. So does Odoo have an SD code for Italy?
Yes.
Perfect.
I don't know it by heart, but yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. We don't have time to finish all the questions, so
okay.
Thank you for this presentation.
Come to the booth. Okay.